Alpha plays only.
Huxley is the NFT Star Wars. What do you think when people say Huxley is the NFT Star Wars? I think it's an IP that is tremendously undervalued and going to be super valuable. And what is your take on that?
Well, that's kind of the plan. I mean, that was the plan when I started on this almost a decade ago. It's like I want to make my own big thing like that, and it takes a long time to do that from the ground up, and that's why I didn't really talk about it or share anything when I was working on this graphic novel universe and designing all this stuff. But to me, that's like the required work necessary before you launch a product. And so I feel like it's in a place where like I did all the work and it's ready to go. And now that we're starting to talk to a lot of bigger companies and things behind the scenes, the response we're getting is so like tremendously positive because they see what's behind the curtain. They're like, oh wow, like we don't have to do anything. Like it's ready. Like let's make this. Like it's ready to go. So like that position is, I guess, just going through this so many times on other people's projects, I see all the things that are needed before things can get off the ground. And like, here are all the things that block most projects in the past from a movie getting made or anything getting made. It's like, and I did all that work. So I think everyone's going to be really excited when they see what's coming, because all the work, all that foundation work is already completed to create something of the magnitude that we're expected. So I think it's gonna be a really, really interesting year.
Do you think if George Lucas was born in this time, like you're, maybe 30 years old in this time, do you think he would attach himself to NFTs and the power and the utility they offer?
I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. Like he did. I think it takes people like that, right? They do what they can in the environment they're in. And like the stories I read about George Lucas was kind of the same, where it's like he basically was couch surfing on his friends' couches. He was kind of broke and was just like writing Star Wars, and he showed a couple close friends, but he didn't do anything until it was like completed, and he had like too much. I think it was like Francis Ford Coppola's just like, take this part and make that like the middle chunk or something, and that ended up turning into the first movie. And but it took a lot of that, just like creating something in silence and crafting something that he cared about, and then going to make it. It would be interesting to see, like what he would have done now or how that might have worked out. And
For sure. I cannot wait to when I'm 40 years old, 50 years old, and at a Comic-Con, and they showed the trailer of the return of Huxley, or the return of whatever, and then people are just bawling their eyes out, inflammated of the face, and everyone captures that live reaction in the metaverse. Is that stuff you dream about with this IP, with this story? And we're gonna get to your questions. I see them rolling in.
sure.
There's a lot of moving components of this stream, but we want to honor this wonderful moment. So, you got that question?
What is it?
See, I was saying, when it comes down to this IP, are you looking long term, right? 100 years from now?
Yeah.
Is this why you're building in the trenches right now in these robot avatars, these human avatars? Where do you see this IP in 100 years?
100 years. where do you see
You'll
it
be gone.
Well, if in 100 years maybe we're all like uploaded to the metaverse and we're all just living in these, maybe I'm just living in Huxleyverse, and we're all just like AIs, uploaded AIs, and we're all just hanging out virtually. So maybe I will be in 100 years.
I definitely don't want to be that robot trapped in issue number 2. I don't want to be that guy.
Well, like, I guess if we look at where everything's going, right? Like, the way I always saw it was like, all these things will move virtually into a space where we're all hanging out. I mean, we kind of have little versions of that in video games, right? Where it's like we're all hanging out in Call of Duty or Minecraft or whatever, but all that will eventually be connected. And if there's a version of that where we're all like, I feel like those will be their own little mini realities. And maybe, I don't know, we can get real deep into this, where it's like, okay, if the singularity happens and like AI and robotics supersede human intelligence, and we've already made all these like different realities, and then our consciousness is uploaded and we are just starting over in these new realities, and maybe they just reset and we're all basically born again, and then we don't even know we're in it. And then maybe in 100 years I'm talking to the wasteland young and we're having a conversation about what's going to happen in the next 100 years of the thing I'm building in the wasteland universe of Huxley, and then it's all like going in on itself in a giant infinite loop.
Sheesh. This guy literally said he said Web 4 is reincarnation to Huxley. That's what he said.
Reincarnation in the metaverse is Web 5
Web
or
4.
something. Web 5 or something. Web 9.
That's lovely. I love that. I love that so much. I love that. Wow. So are you saying that Huxley has a like a past and a future? Mm-hmm. Is it like it has everything?
So there's like in the later issues, there's definitely like flashbacks where you see like wars and things that happen and how things got to the point they are in the story. And but obviously there's like a moment where a lot of things happen, but what happened like 100 years before that when things weren't so bad? Maybe they're on the brink or doing okay, or humanity's prospering, and there could be a lot of interesting stories that happen in that timeline before things get to a tipping point and all these wars happen.
Wow. So when you said George Lucas, he wrote from the middle. He wrote a big, encyclopedia and pulled it from the middle. Is that how you did it? Did you start? Great stories are sometimes started in like the middle, or you just went straight to the beginning. I think the middle.
This is like kind of it's like, I guess you always pick the story that happens. I just told the most interesting story that I wanted to, but it takes so long to make that you start thinking before and after, and like, well, this is kind of a dramatic ending. If I did something after that, like, what would that be? And just gets me thinking about that. And okay, all these things happen, and I hint at a couple things that happened in the past, but what could happen further before that, and echoing real life, like how, like in the prequels, when some people were like, why is all these spaceships so shiny and like curvy when everything in the old Star Wars was very like chunky and utilitarian? And George Lucas said something like, the cars in the 60s were very curvy and utilitarian, or very curvy and like sculptural. And then once we got into the 80s, when our manufacturing process like needed to be more efficient and cheap, everything got really chunky and boxy looking. But this happened in real life, and it all depends on like the realities of the time, manufacturing process, like what was happening, and that leads to a certain visual aesthetic into the designs and things around us. So it's using things that happen in real life and echoing that to our science fiction worlds is
love that.
Really, really intelligent and smart, I think.
Science fiction writers, I feel they literally shape the future. So they put materials that even the fashion, they're futurists. They shape our tomorrow. And do you feel like you had a chance to do that with your futuristic mind, to shape the next 20 years with like fashion or styles, or
I don't want to say anything until I get there, but like I don't want to like let's see what happens when all this is out the door. And I'm sure like Star Wars has influenced certain fashion designers and things, and like let's build Huxley into something really cool and see how it influences bigger things as a whole. And I'd love to see that. That would be really cool. Or maybe when, if anything, some apocalyptic moment happens and we're all just wearing this stuff that I drew.
For real.
It ends up being the most efficient armor design or something.
For real. It might be the most thermonuclear protective for your skin, all the jazz. Shout out to reaching 100 messages. That's huge. I haven't seen that in a while. So super grateful and contentment to all the people inside the dojo.
Alpha plays only.